So today actually we will be starting the forced vibration response of multiple degree of freedom systems. Forced vibration means that now on right hand side we will be having some applied loading vector. So our original equation will be mu dot dot plus, if we talk about undamped case first, so it will be simply ku is equal to sum p of t. So now there will be some applied loading and it will become the forced vibration case, right? So again I will repeat that we will be studying two methods to solve for the forced vibration of multiple degree of freedom systems. One method is numerical integration method, that is step by step direct integration method. Step by step direct integration method, and as I explained in single degree of freedom systems, it is not one method, there are several methods of this family. One of those methods we will be studying for multiple degree of freedom systems also. Actually you have already studied it in single degree, so same method will be applicable here, with the difference that M will be replaced by mass matrix, K will be replaced by K matrix, and U will be replaced by U vector. All the flow chart and everything will be same. But before doing that, the first method will be the modal analysis method, or also sometimes called as the mode superposition method, and this is classical method, right? This first one is not numerical method, not approximate method, but it is classical method. So we will be studying that one first. But even before starting the first of these methods, let's get ourselves familiarized with a concept called orthogonality property of vectors. The orthogonality property says that if you have two vectors, let's say V and W, and some matrix capital A, such that V transpose times A times W is a null vector, then we will say that V and W are orthogonal with respect to matrix A, right? So this is the definition of orthogonality property, that any two vectors V and W, if they satisfy this equation for any matrix A, we will say that they are orthogonal to each other with respect to A, right? Now once you understand the definition of orthogonality property, or when two vectors are orthogonal with respect to a certain matrix, we will prove now that mode shape vectors, phi vectors, which we are now well familiar with, they are orthogonal to each other. For example, first mode is orthogonal to second mode with respect to mass matrix and also with respect to K matrix. This is a special property which mode shapes have. This is their inherent property, and we can prove it. We can prove that if we take first mode shape vector and multiply it with mass matrix and multiply again with the second mode shape vector, we will be getting 0, because this will be first mode shape transpose times mass times the second mode shape. So V transpose times A times W. If this product is 0, which means that V and W are orthogonal to each other with respect to A, right? So mode shape vectors, they are orthogonal to each other with respect to mass matrix as well as with respect to K matrix. We will prove this statement in a minute, but let's first understand what that statement is. So if I take phi1 transpose times mass times phi2, this product will be 0. This property says that this product should be 0. Phi1 transpose will be what? 1 by n if there are n degrees of freedom. So phi1 is actually n by 1, but when we take transpose, this becomes 1 by n times mass matrix is n by n and phi2 is n by 1. So this product of three things is just 1 by 1. So which means it will be a scalar thing, a scalar quantity, and that quantity will be 0 if we have phi1 and phi2. Similarly, if we have phi2 and phi3, that product will be 0. We will show that or prove that in a minute, but this is what I mean, that mode shapes are orthogonal to each other with respect to mass matrix. If I have phi1 transpose into mass matrix times phi1 again, that will be a non-zero answer because I have phi1 and phi1. So mode shapes are orthogonal to each other. 1 is orthogonal to 2 and similarly 2 is with 3 or 1 is with 3. So whenever you have any two different mode shapes and you put phi1 transpose m times any other mode shape, the product will be 0 and it will be non-zero only when you have the same mode shapes in that matrix, that product. So phi2 transpose m phi2 will be non-zero, but phi2 transpose m phi1 is 0, right. So mode shapes are orthogonal to each other with respect to mass as well as with respect to k. So this is not only for mass, even when you have phi1 transpose k times phi2, you will see that the answer will be 0, right. So this is the property which mode shapes have. This is a property which we kind of discovered today, that this property is available for mode shapes, and we will prove it in next 1 or 2 slides. If we arrange all mode shapes of a structure in one big matrix and call it as modal matrix, so the capital phi matrix is actually what? It is just all mode shapes arranged as columns. So the first column is actually phi1, second column is phi2, and there will be n mode shapes. So this matrix will be an n by n matrix, right. So another form of modal orthogonality or another form of the same statement is that modal matrix is orthogonal to itself with respect to M and K matrix. So for I not equal to J, I mean for example, if I say phi ij, I represents row and J represents column, right. So when I say capital phi transpose into mass matrix times capital phi again, the resulting matrix obviously will be n by n, right, but all the entries in that n by n matrix in diagonal will be non-zero and all the off diagonal terms will be 0. This is when I say that for any I not equal to j, answer will be 0, and for I equal to j, answer will be non-zero. So let's try to understand that further. When I take the capital phi transpose, which means first row is now changed to first column, right, and then similarly second row is now second column, mass times the phi again, right. So in the resulting matrix, all the diagonal entries will be corresponding to a product when the same mode shapes are being multiplied, and off diagonal terms will be the result of a product when two different mode shapes are being multiplied. So the resulting matrix for this product is a diagonal matrix. All the entries in the diagonal will be non-zero while all off diagonal terms will be 0. I will come back to this form of modal orthogonality again, but let us try to first simplify this statement and try to prove it, that any one mode shape transpose multiplied by mass matrix multiplied by any other mode shape, this product is 0, and this will be only non-zero if and only if when you have the same mode shapes in this product, 1 and 1 or 2 and 2, but whenever two different mode shapes are being multiplied like this, the answer will be 0 always. So, this statement is called modal orthogonality or orthogonality property of mode shapes. So, let us derive these orthogonality relationships. We know that this is the original eigen equation, this is the original eigenvalue equation. For any ith mode, I can simply replace omega with omega I, and the corresponding phi will become phi I, right. So, this you are familiar with that equation already for any ith mode, correct. For any other jth mode, the same equation will be simply you can write that as omega j square and phi will be replaced by phi j. Now, you multiply equation 7 with phi j transpose. I mean, equation 7 is originally for any ith mode, but you multiply it with phi j transpose, and equation 8 you multiply with phi I transpose, right. So, equation 8 is originally for any jth mode, but you multiply both sides with phi I transpose, you will get two new equations, and these will be these ones, right. So, phi j transpose will be there multiplied to this equation, and here also you have phi j transpose. Similarly, phi I transpose you multiply with this equation, so you will have phi I transpose on this side and phi I transpose on this side also, right. Now, let us take the transpose of equation 9. Equation 9 you take transpose on both sides, right. So, equation 9 I take transpose here also and I take transpose here also on both sides. Let us see what it becomes. Phi j transpose, when you have again transpose, it will simply become phi j. So, two rules we will be applying. Any matrix A, when you have transpose and then transpose again, it will simply become A. And another one is that when you have multiplication of A and B and whole transpose, this is actually B transpose into A transpose. So, their order is reversed. So, let us apply both of these rules here. So, this will simply become, when you take transpose of equation 9, this will become phi j transpose, and again transpose will become phi j, but now this will be on the right hand side of that product. Similarly, when you have k into phi I and you have the transpose, it will become phi I transpose into k. So, this will also be reversed. So, everyone is clear the left hand side. On the right hand side, this transpose will not affect the scalar quantity. So, omega I square will be simply out, but this product will be affected by this transpose. Phi j transpose and another transpose will simply become phi j, and that will be on the right hand side of that product now. And this m into phi I will have transpose, but they will be replaced, or you can say they will shift their positions. So, this will become phi I transpose into m transpose, phi I transpose into m transpose. So, now everyone is clear with equation 11, all clear. So, now let us have this equation 11, and we know that employing the fact that K transpose and M transpose are symmetric matrices. So, K transpose is equal to K and M transpose is equal to M. They are symmetric matrices. So, when you take their transpose, you get the same matrix. So, this will be replaced simply by M, this will be replaced simply by K. This will give us equation 12. right? Now equation 10 we already have. Equation 12 is the result of equation 11, but equation 10 we already have from last slide, and that is this equation. So let's now rewrite that equation 10 below equation 12, right? So this is equation 10, and 10 minus 12 will give us this thing, right? Because left hand side of both of these equation is same. So on one side you will get 0 when you 10 minus 12, and on one side you will have same product taken outside, and you will simply have omega j square minus omega I square. So 10 minus 12 will give you this equation 13. You have product of two quantities, that is 0. So either one of them is 0, or second one is 0, or both are 0. These are the three possibilities, right? So you have actually some constant number omega j square minus omega I square times this product of two vectors and a matrix equal to 0, right? So which means that either this product is 0 or this quantity is 0, right? So we now know that this ith mode and jth mode are two different modes. Their corresponding frequencies will be different. So their difference may not be 0, which means that whenever I and j are two different modes, this thing will not be 0, which means this product should be 0. This is exactly what orthogonality property is, that whenever I is not equal to j, this product will always be 0. And now we proved it, that phi I and phi j will be orthogonal to each other with respect to mass matrix whenever I is not equal to j. So any two different modes, they are orthogonal to each other. But if you have the same modes, then obviously this product will be non-zero, because in that case this difference will be 0, then product will be non-zero. So this is shown for mass matrix, but you can show it for K matrix also, right? Same steps of solution you can repeat, and you will finally get this equation also, that for any phi I transpose into K into phi j will be 0 if there is whenever there is I not equal to j, and this product will be a non-zero product, non-zero answer whenever I is equal to j, right? So when I is equal to j, you will get some scalar quantity as a product of this multiplication, as a result of this multiplication. So let's call that phi I transpose into m into phi I again. Let's call that scalar quantity as mu I. Later we will see that this is called as the modal mass of ith mode, right? So this mu I is a non-zero, you can say, answer of this product phi I transpose into m into phi. And this is your assignment to check what is a positive definite matrix, which will ensure that this mu I will be a positive number always. Similarly, when you calculate phi I transpose into K into phi I, now K will be in the middle. In that case, you can show that this will be simply equal to omega I square into the same thing, which is actually mu I. So mu I into omega I square, where mu I and omega I, they are positive numbers. This quantity, which is obtained as a scalar quantity for any ith mode by having this multiplication, this is called modal stiffness. Modal stiffness, because it is derived from the K matrix by having phi I and phi I on either side of that K matrix. So the summary is that whenever you have phi I transpose into m into phi j, you will have 0 answer for I not equal to j, and you will have a mu I answer for I equal to j. Similarly, whenever you have phi I transpose into k into phi j, you will have 0 answer when I not equal to j, and mu I into omega I square for I equal to j. This equation you can easily derive it using the eigenvalue equation. So, it is the same eigenvalue equation by having just phi I transpose on both sides. So, this is actually equation 10 which you have written that there already. So, this equation is the same equation. So, now you know that whenever you have orthogonality with respect to k, it is simply equal to omega square times orthogonality with respect to m. So, therefore, you get this number that when you have phi I transpose into k into phi j, you will have this as a non-zero solution whenever I is equal to j, and this number is called modal stiffness, this number is called modal mass for any ith mode, right. So, if I ask you to calculate the ith mode, the modal mass of second mode, let us say. So, actually you have to do this thing, phi 2 transpose into mass times phi 2 again. This product will give you mu 2, right, a non-zero answer which will be modal mass for second mode, right. But if I put 1 here, the answer will be 0. If we replace, if we do phi 2 and phi 1, even then you will get 0. So, mode shapes are orthogonal to each other. Whenever you have I not equal to j, you will get 0. For I equal to j, you will get a non-zero answer. 1, 3 will be orthogonal to each other, 1, 4 will be orthogonal to each other, 2, 3 will be orthogonal to each other, and so on, right. So, I will maybe show you in next class, or you yourself can have that exercise, that make a simple ETABS model, very symmetric model, and 3-dimensional model maybe, and ETABS after running the analysis give you the story masses also. So, you extract story masses and construct the diagonal mass matrix from that. Let us say 10-story building, you extract the 10 masses and arrange them in diagonal, you get the mass matrix. Then you extract the mode shapes from ETABS. From the modal case results, just select the story displacements and normalize them, this becomes your mode shape for the modal case, right. The story displacements reported by modal case can be normalized, and they are actually the phi vectors, right. So, just extract maybe first few 2 or 3 phi vectors from ETABS and confirm that whenever you have this product phi 1 transpose mass matrix into phi 2, take this product maybe in Excel or MATLAB, you will get 0 as an answer, right, or maybe very small number, negligible number. But whenever you have phi 1 transpose into m into phi 1, in that case you will get a non-zero modal mass as a result, right. Same is for K matrix, but mass matrix is easy to obtain from ETABS. It directly gives you the story masses which you can arrange in diagonal, so you directly get the mass matrix. But for K matrix, if you can find a way to extract it from ETABS, then you can do that exercise in Excel. But you can confirm that, maybe I will show you in any of next class that I already have done that exercise and I have confirmed that mode shapes are really orthogonal, right. Even you can do it for that 3-story building, which you have already seen that example. You have calculated phi 1, phi 2, phi 3. Now, simply multiply phi 1 transpose with mass matrix times phi 2. This will be your 1 by 3 times 3 by 3 times 3 by 1. The product will be 1 by 1 and that will be 0 if you have 1 and 2, right. So, you can confirm modal orthogonality from any example, right. So, equation 18 and 19 are called orthogonality conditions. Mode shapes always satisfy these conditions, right. why we are studying this special you can say property of mode shapes? Because we will make use of this property in the forced vibration response. The mode superposition method, which we are going to start today, it will make use of the orthogonality property of mode shapes. Actually that method is possible only because we have the mode shapes with these property, right. So that method is based on this specific property of mode shapes. So another form of that property, it can be written in another form also, and that form is this one which I just started, and then I said that I will come back to it later. That let's make a capital phi matrix such that all the mode shapes are arranged as columns, right. So phi 1 is first column, second column up to phi n. So it is an n by n matrix for an n degree of freedom system, let us say. Now according to orthogonality condition, let us try to calculate this product, capital phi transpose times mass times capital phi again. So capital phi transpose will be now a square matrix with each mode shape as a row now, because it is now transpose. So each mode shape is now a row, right, not a column anymore but a row, multiplied by mass matrix multiplied by the original phi matrix, where every mode shape is one column. Now let us evaluate what that product will look like. First of all, that product will be an n by n matrix, right, because this is n by n, this is n by n, and capital phi is also n by n. So the product of these three will be an n by n matrix, this n by n matrix. But let us see what are the values for that product. First value will be phi 1 transpose, the first row of this matrix, times the mass matrix times the first column, right, which is phi 1. So I write phi 1 transpose capital M and phi 1 again, right. Similarly the second entry will be phi 2 transpose, the second row, times the mass matrix times the second column. This becomes phi 1 transpose M into phi 2, second columns mean phi 2. Similarly the 2 by 2 entry, this one will be the second row M times the second column. So it will be 2 and 2. So each of the entry in this n by n matrix can be worked out this way. So you have let us say first row mass first column, this entry, first row mass second column, this entry, where you have 1 and 2, first row mass and third column, third entry here, first row mass and last phi n, last entry here, right. Similarly you can fill the second row of this matrix, mass and first column, this entry, right. So you will see that in this product matrix all the diagonal values will have same mode shapes and off diagonal values will have different mode shapes. So here you have 1 1, but here you have 1 and 2, 1 and n, but in the second row you have 2 and 1, 2 and 2, similarly 2 and 3 up till 2 and n, and same pattern continues. The result will be that only the diagonal entries will have same mode shapes, and therefore only the diagonal entries will have non-zero answer, and those non-zero answers will be modal masses of each mode shape, each mode actually. So the first number is the modal mass of first mode, this is the modal mass of second mode mu 2 and all up to mu n. So this is the modal mass of nth mode, and all the off diagonal terms, diagonals other than the terms other than diagonal, they will be 0 because of the orthogonality property. So because 1 and 2 and there are different mode shapes appearing here, So you will resultingly you will get a matrix which will be a diagonal matrix with the modal masses in the diagonal and off diagonal terms will be 0. All these are small phi's, because see this matrix is actually capital phi. So what I did is, actually I know capital phi is n by n matrix, but I write it like a vector because I want to make you understand that each of that each phi I transpose is actually one whole row, right. So that whole row will be multiplied by mass matrix multiplied by the first column, right. So the first entry is obtained how? First row of capital phi into m into first column of this capital phi matrix, right, because you have transpose here. So first row m and first column, this becomes this thing, phi 1 transpose m into phi 1 again, right. But if you want to make the second entry, it will become phi 2 transpose into m into phi phi 1 transpose into m into phi 2. So phi 1 transpose into m into phi 2, right. So the product matrix will have all the same modes in diagonal and different modes in off diagonal terms. So off diagonal terms will all become 0 by applying the orthogonality property, and you will have only non-zero answers in the diagonal only. So the resulting matrix will be a diagonal matrix. So this is another form of the orthogonality condition, that capital phi transpose into m into phi is a diagonal matrix. This is another way of explaining the orthogonality property, that all the off diagonal terms in this product will be 0 and you have only the diagonal entries, and those diagonal entries are modal masses, right. Actually I kind of condensed that whole multiplication process. Actually this is the product of 3 n by n matrices. So I just simply try to conceptually explain that whatever the entries of mass matrix will be, they will be part of that product, that they will be multiplied with everything. So I urge you to make a capital phi matrix 3 by 3 for that example building which we have done, right. So you already have phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, condense them into one capital phi matrix, multiply it, take its transpose, multiply it with the real mass matrix of that structure, and multiply again with the capital phi, and confirm that this resulting matrix is a diagonal matrix with mu values at its diagonals, right. So here I just showed you the product conceptually, right, but you can imagine that what I actually mean is that whatever is the resulting product, it will have same mode shapes in the diagonal and different mode shapes in the off diagonal terms. So everyone is clear? This equation 21 is another form of the orthogonality property. We will be actually using this form in the mode superposition method in the forced vibration case. So similarly for K matrix also we can write phi transpose, capital phi transpose into K into capital phi again will be a diagonal matrix again with modal stiffnesses in the diagonal, and all the off diagonal terms will be 0, right. So we can show in a similar manner that the product of this the result of this product actually will also be a diagonal matrix with non-zero values in the diagonal only, and off diagonal terms will be 0, right. There is one interpretation of modal orthogonality which I can simply state, and later you can think what it actually mean, is that when we say modes are orthogonal, we actually mean that the work done by any nth mode forces in going through the rth mode displacement is 0. When we actually apply a force pattern with the shape of nth mode, that force pattern will not do any work in rth mode displacement. So, another form of the same statement will be that when we apply some static forces corresponding to nth mode, which want to displace the structure in nth mode displacement, the work done by those forces in displacing the structure in any other rth mode will be 0, right. This is another, you can say, a way to interpret modal orthogonality. One more concept and then we will go to the forced vibration case and apply this orthogonality property. And that concept is related to how we normalize modal vectors, phi I vectors, small phi I vectors. We know that if phi I is a modal vector, some a into phi I is also a modal vector, because actually the shape is the mode shape actually. And we now also know that phi I transpose into m into phi I again is some quantity mu I, which is called modal mass. The value of mu I depends on how we scale phi I, right, because mu I is composed of this product, actually is a result of this product. So, it depends on how we have actually scaled this phi I vector. So, there are often two normalization procedures which we use. One is very simple, which we have already done, and that is that we just fix the top number as 1 and then we calculate the others relative to that, right. So, we normalize the mode shape such that phi 1 I actually, the first entry of the ith mode shape, we make it equal to 1 and related we calculate others with respect to that. So, when you extract the mode shape from a program called Perform 3D, by default they are normalized this way, that the roof number is always set equal to 1 and the others are relative to that. But when you extract the mode shapes from ETABS, they use a different normalization scheme, and that is this one, that mode shapes are normalized such that phi I transpose into m into phi I, which is actually the modal mass for ith mode, that number is set equal to 1. So, they calculate phi I such that this product is equal to 1, which means the ith mode shape is normalized such that the ith modal mass will become 1, right. So, it will, for example, that program will give you phi 1 in such a way that when you take this product for first mode, you will get the modal mass for first mode equal to 1. Similarly, the second mode shape it will give you in such a way that when you write it for second mode, this equation, you get the mu 2 equal to 1, right. The second modal mass will be equal to 1. So, actually in general we know that modal mass is generally not equal to 1. So, actually we redefine phi I such that we normalize phi I such that this equation is satisfied, right. So, one the normalized mode shape will be the original mode shape divided by the square root of mu I. If you normalize the mode shapes like this way, you will satisfy this equation, right. Yeah, that you calculate mu I square root and you divide the phi I, all entries of phi I with that number. You normalize it such that this equation will be satisfied. So, for example, with this normalized mode shape, you will see that since there are two phi I entries, so you have under root mu I, when it is multiplied 2 times, it will give you this equality, or this, you can say, product will be equal to 1. So, ETABS give us the phi values, actually it reports the displacements in modal cases. Those displacements are mode shapes, but they are by default normalized using this second normalization scheme, right. So, actually you have to have one normalization scheme, and one is that you can just fix top number equal to 1, and second commonly used normalization scheme is that you normalize mode shapes such that this product is equal to 1 for any ith mode. Shape will remain same. The process of normalization will not affect shape, because that normalization will be with a constant number. So, if phi I is a modal vector, some a into phi I is also a modal vector. If we go for the first case, we will divide the whole vector by the top number, so that the top number becomes 1, right. So, we divide the whole column or whole vector by the same top number. So, the resulting shape will still remain same. If you divide by -10 and the resulting entry become positive, but still it will be same shape. I mean you are saying this will become this, same shape, because ultimately it will be multiplied by sine function, and sine function is from -1 to +1, right. So, shape will be same. By shape I mean the ratio of any two numbers along the height. This is when I say the shape is same. So, if you divide this number by this number, or you divide this number by this number, the ratio will be same always, right, both negative or both positive. So, when the relative values are same, it's same shape, right. These are the two commonly used normalization schemes. This is the summary. If you use this normalization scheme, the mode shapes are, by the way, will be called as orthonormal, which means that they are orthogonal already. This is their inherent property, and now they are normalized such that the modal mass is 1. So, they are called sometimes orthonormal when they are normalized with relative to the mass matrix. So, in that case, when the mode shapes are normalized this way, this product will be an identity matrix, because all the modal masses will become 1, right. So, this is a convenient way of reporting mode shapes or normalizing mode shapes, that normalize them such that the modal mass of that mode becomes unity, right. So, this is another normalization scheme. In that case, this product phi transpose into k into phi will become omega 1 square, omega 2 square, omega 3 square, because mu 1, mu 2, mu 3 are all 1, right. So, this product will give you a matrix containing natural frequency squares in the diagonal, right. So, now we are familiar with two concepts. One is called the modal orthogonality, other is called the normalization of modal vectors, and two schemes are commonly used. Although ideally there can be any scheme which you use, as long as the shape is same, you can use that scheme, but two are most commonly used. One is that top number equal to 1, and second is the modal mass is equal to 1 for ith mode. Now, let us start the forced vibration response and see how this modal orthogonality help us in developing a method for the solution of matrix equations of motion. This property will help us in solving the forced vibration response. So, in order to develop this method, I will be using first orthogonality property, and second is the same concept of generalized coordinates, which we introduced in one of the previous sessions. So, I will be using the generalized coordinates concept as well as the orthogonality property. So, let us quickly revise what were generalized coordinates. The idea was that if you have any vector, for example u vector containing some quantities, in our case this is, let us say, the displacement vector of our multiple degree of freedom system, and this is a physical vector, which means each entry is actually a physical displacement of your structure. We know that it is the displacement of a particular story. The idea is that we can write the same u vector as a sum of some shapes or some independent vectors multiplied by the generalized coordinates. So, u1 of t, u2 of t up to un of t is written as some phi1 constant vector times q1 of t plus phi2 q2 of t up to phi n qn of t. So, these phi1, phi2 and up to phi n, they are actually the you can say some shapes or actually independent vectors which are expanding our u of t vector. q1, q2, q3 up to qn are generalized coordinates. Currently they are unknown, right? And this equation can be condensed in this form also, and another form is that u vector is equal to the capital phi matrix times q of t vector. Q of t vector will contain q1, q2, q3 up to qn, and phi matrix will be the matrix containing all those independent vectors. So, the idea was, if you remember, it was that any vector can be written as the sum of independent vectors, right? As long as they are independent vectors, you can expand any vector as a sum of those vectors, right? So, it is like u1 of t will be actually this whole column first into q1, sorry, actually it will be phi 1 1 times q1 plus phi 1 2 times q2 up to phi 1 n times qn. So, all the generalized coordinates are being combined to make u1. Similarly, all the generalized coordinates will be combined by different numbers to make u2, right. So, we have just written u vector, we have expanded it in terms of generalized coordinates, right. So, please remember that concept, that any u vector is now equal to some independent vector multiplied by q1 plus another independent vector times q2 plus another independent vector times q3 and so on. This is called the expansion of a vector into independent vectors, right. So, this equation is our key equation. It takes our problem from u coordinates to q coordinates, right, and phi is a matrix containing all those independent vectors as columns, right, and phi is also sometimes called as the transformation matrix, which is converting our problem from u to q, right. U is also a function of time, q is also a function of time, but u is physical coordinates, q is generalized coordinates, and capital phi is some transformation matrix containing independent vectors, constant vectors as its columns, right. So, this was the summary of that concept, that we can expand that. This is the graphical form of that expansion, right, that any vector when condensed into capital phi matrix, right, it can transform u to q. That matrix can serve as a transformation matrix. So, this is our bottom line, this is our conversion equation, the concept of generalized coordinates. Phi is a transformation matrix n by n, and if we take our problem from u to q using this equation and then solve the problem in q coordinates and bring it back to u coordinates, this will be very simple case for us, we will see that in future. One specific case is that when capital phi is identity matrix, in that case q and u will be same, right, the physical coordinates and generalized coordinates will be same. Now, the bottom line is that if capital phi is properly chosen, the equation of motion in the q coordinates will be uncoupled, and I will keep on explaining the meaning of this sentence in next 1 or 2 weeks. I repeat again that if we properly choose the transformation matrix to convert our problem from u to q coordinates, we will see that the problem in q coordinates will become very simple. It will become uncoupled, and I will explain in 1 or 2 slides what that uncoupling means. But first understand what is coupling and how we are dealing with it. Our governing equation of motion is this: mu dot dot plus ku is equal to sum p of t. This is the multiple degree of freedom system equation. The K matrix is coupled. By coupling I mean that it has, for example, K1 plus K2, K2 plus K3. Depending upon the connectivity of different elements in the structure, the K matrix will have all the entries, off diagonal entries, and then it will have coupled terms. Whenever you have K1, which is the stiffness of first story, you also have the K2 also in the same equation, and maybe K3 plus K4, K1 plus K3, these terms will be appearing in your K matrix. It all depends on the connectivity of different elements. For a shear building, even for a shear building it is coupled, because you have K1 plus K2, K2 plus K3, K3 plus K4. Similarly, for a complex structure, it will be all full of sum of stiffnesses of different elements. Element local matrices will be combined to make this capital K, right? Because of this coupling, you will not be able to solve this governing equation of motion equation by equation or row by row. For a 10 degree of freedom system, this matrix equation is actually 10 equations condensed into one matrix equation. Now each of that equation cannot be solved independently, right? It's not that you solve one equation and you get the response of one story. You solve the second equation, you get the response of second story. This is what coupling means, that your problem is coupled. Your K matrix is coupled, you have to solve it simultaneously. You cannot simply equation by equation solve the 10 equations separately and then this will give you the displacement history of your 10 stories. This is not going to be the case. So this is what I mean when I say that your equation of motion is coupled. It is coupled, that you cannot solve them one by one, because your K matrix is coupled matrix, right? If you have, for example, just imagine a matrix equation of this form, that you have an n by n matrix where all the off diagonal entries are 0 and you have only the diagonal entries, multiplied by some vector which is n by 1, which is composed of all unknown values, let us say small x1, small x2 up till small xn, is equal to some vector n by 1 which is composed of all constant values a, b, c, d, all values are constant, right? Now this is a matrix equation which is uncoupled, because you can solve, you can take out one equation one by one and solve what is x1, what is x2, because off diagonal terms are 0. So the first entry is multiplied by x1 is equal to small a, right? Because all other values are 0, 0, 0, so no x2, x3, x3, x4 in the first equation. Similarly, when you multiply second row with the same column, you get 0 and then non-zero entry and all others are 0, right? So you will have non-zero entry here times x2 equal to small b, right? So this is an example of a matrix equation which is uncoupled. You can solve, you can take out one row, one column, multiply it with one column and equate it to the entry on the other side, take out that equation and solve it independently. So you can calculate what is x1, independently from one equation. You can calculate what is x2 from the next equation, and equation by equation you can solve those n equations. You do not need to solve this whole system of matrices simultaneously. You can take out one by one equation. But for your matrix system of equations, this is not possible. They are coupled, right? So you cannot simply, because your unknowns are what? Story displacements, u1, u2, u3, u4. So you cannot simply take out one equation out of that system and solve for u1, right? Because that u1 equation will be containing k2, it will be containing some entries from the other story. So you cannot solve that matrix equation story by story, right? This is what I mean by coupled equations. Now the idea is that if we use mode shape matrix as the transformation matrix, the resulting equation of motion in the new q coordinates will be uncoupled. They will be in a form where we can take out one equation, solve for q1, take out the second equation, solve for q2 and up to qn, and then finally bring the solution back from q to u, right? So it will be like using modal matrix, we will be taking our problem from u coordinates to q coordinates by using this transformation equation. In q coordinates, our new equation of motion in q coordinates will be uncoupled. It will be in a form which can be solved equation by equation. That will be easier, right? And when we solve all those equations there and calculate this q of t vector, finally we know phi vector already, so we bring our solution back to u coordinates. This will become our mode superposition method for forced vibration response of multiple degree of freedom systems. So let's keep our discussion up till here. I will actually start explaining the actual method itself from next week onwards, but this will be the gist of our forced vibration method which we are going to have. I repeat again one last time that if we use the mode shape matrix as the transformation matrix between u and q, the resulting equation of motion in q coordinates will be in an uncoupled form, and that uncoupled form, some of you might have guessed already that it will be because of that orthogonality property. Because what is orthogonality property? That capital phi transpose into mass matrix times capital Phi is a diagonal matrix. Similarly, capital Phi transpose into k into capital Phi is a diagonal matrix, right? So this property will actually will help us in uncoupling the equation of motion. The equation of motion in the new q coordinates will be uncoupled. They will be simpler to actually solve. So we will solve them there in q coordinates, and finally using the same equation we bring the solution back to u coordinates, right? So we will continue in the next session.